Today's episode is about 3 steps to convert self-doubt into strategic momentum. I continue to be amazed at even high-level female executives, how often self-doubt creeps in. It seems to be prevalent still. And one of my clients who's in her 50s said, I feel like I'm a 12-year-old in front of my boss. And these are moments that happen for all of us. There's might be triggering moments. There might be people or archetypes even of people. You may know, some of you may know my boardroom story of when I was tongue-tied in the boardroom and my boss shut down the meeting and I was so embarrassed and I couldn't get the words out because, well, there were a number of things. Number one, I didn't necessarily agree with the format that she suggested that I present in. But it was also that I found out through a lot of personal growth work later that she was ultimately the archetype of my dad. She had similar qualities, and it was challenging for me in those moments to stay grounded in the confidence of who I am because of all the things that brought up from my childhood. So we all have things that get in our way, and that's why I have these 3 steps to help you to convert that self-doubt because let's face it, doubt is always going to be there. It's a matter of how do we silence it? How do we move past it regardless of the doubt there and take the action that we want to take? So the first step is to recognize that self-doubt is not a blocker. And excuse me, it's a signal. Leaders convert it into momentum by asking this simple question: what's the next smallest step forward? It's as simple as taking the next step. We might find ourselves stuck, and a lot of us aren't necessarily stuck. We're just operating in patterns from our past that no longer serve us. So if you can look at it first, notice the doubt. And again, this takes that emotional intelligence to go, okay, I feel it. I'm recognizing it. Now, how can I let that doubt serve me? So think about it as a way to be in service to you, not a way to make you smaller or crawl in the corner, which all of us, let's face it, have probably wanted to do at one time or another. So think about that next step. James Clear, in his book Atomic Habits, talks about the power of habit stacking, which is simply, if you want to have a new habit, you stack it next to a habit you already do. So let's say, for example, you want to brush your teeth, or no, hopefully you brush your teeth every day, twice a day. And instead of thinking about, oh, when am I going to take time for this or that? So you could stack that habit with brushing your teeth. So, for example, maybe it is saying an inspirational quote or a motivational quote or something that inspires you every morning. You could say that right before you brush your teeth. So that would be considered habit stacking. And for me, when I wake up in the morning, I have to open up the shades. So naturally, that would be a great time to stack it with a habit. And for the past 2 years now, I have been opening the shades and saying, "Good morning, Jesus." And that helps ground me. And I look out the window and I think about all the great possibilities that are there. And believe me, I'm not sitting there reflecting for hours. That is not me. I want to tell you realistically how to incorporate these things into your day-to-day life so that then they become habits and then they're ingrained. So you aren't having to think about them as much. So anytime you can create that next step, that is a really powerful way to move these habits forward. All right. The next one is to label the doubt. What's the fear anchoring that doubt? So maybe it's, okay, right now this person is, or I'm feeling this imposter syndrome in this room because of that time when I was in 5th grade and I didn't feel like I belonged in that honors class or something like that. I'm just making that up. But think about, what is that fear that's there? And when you can label the doubt and use what I call, this is another exercise. I love this exercise. This is also in my book. For those of you that don't know, I wrote a book called Trust Your Own Voice, and it is a guidebook for women in how to grow their influence, excuse me, through confident communication. And one of the exercises I have in there is called the fear script, and it's simply labeling the fear. So doubt or fear, pretty much the same thing. It's labeling that and then doing a script with it. So let's say maybe your fear says, I'm not good enough. And that is the label of the fear. And then the script back is your greatest, highest self, the greatest version of yourself. What would she say back to that? I'm not good enough. Most of the time, you're going to come back with some great wisdom, great advice for yourself in that doubt moment. And let's face it, also, the great thing is it's technically when you label something, it acts as if it's outside of yourself. And so we have to remember that we don't need to let fear or doubt define us. Frankly, you are the only one that gets to define who you are. You don't want to let other people or other things define you. So that script going back and forth and journaling can be very helpful. Very, very, very helpful. I've never had a client do it or myself do it without having some great wisdom that came out of that. Because it's amazing when we give ourselves advice, it actually makes a huge difference because we know best what we need, even though it doesn't feel like it sometimes. So label the doubt and then recognize what the fear is that's anchoring that doubt, and then write about it. The next one is identify evidence against it. What wins can you point to? Celebration portfolio is my term for making a list of all the wins or accomplishments that you've had. You can do that in a time frame if you want to box it in a little bit better rather than thinking, not better. It's just sometimes it's easier for people to think the last 6 months or the last year rather than thinking, oh my gosh, I have to come up with something over the last, my entire life. But think about those wins because that points to that evidence, that gives you that data to remind yourself that you've got this, you know what you're doing. And the other part of that celebration portfolio is a list of character qualities. What are the character qualities that you have that make you you? And frankly, it could be things like I'm particularly positive, or people feel really comfortable around me. I have an outlook of inclusivity and people feel really welcomed in my presence, or I get things done really quickly. I'm a fast responder. There's a lot of different things about our character that we often don't think about because they're so ingrained in us and innate that we don't think about it. This is why I'd also recommend that you ask 5 people in your world for 5 positive qualities about you. Ask them to share. What do they see in you? That can make a big difference. And then the last thing is to take one deliberate step. Take one deliberate step that moves a project forward. And if you simply decide, I'm going to take this one step, and then you go for it, you also start building confidence. This week has been a bit of a challenging week for me. I want to be really upfront and say that the doubt has crept in, and it is something that we all are going to contend with regardless of our success. And I will tell you that what makes a huge difference for me is taking action. And usually that taking action is something small. It's a step that I could take, email this person, call this person. And the other thing I want to remind you that we didn't necessarily say at this stage, but connection is everything. So when you can bring your vulnerability, your humility into relationship with someone else that you trust, that connection is so powerful. And a lot of times, one of my friends said, I don't feel comfortable in this conversation because I don't like being vulnerable. And I'm thinking, this is making me feel more connected to you. Are you kidding? Vulnerability is such a powerful, powerful thing. And I want to remind you that that is the door to connection, to being known, to really, again, I keep using the word connection, but it is about connecting with another human being, because a lot of times we don't realize what we're going through is actually helping someone else. And we can feel closer, they can feel closer to us. And yet there is still this stigma for some people around being vulnerable. So I want to encourage you to share something with somebody that you trust that is vulnerable for sure. Do that in the next week. That could be an action step. And when you connect with other people that you trust, that is also a great way to get comfort. A good way to ask for it is to say, hey, I'd love to have you listen to me right now because I'm feeling a little discouraged or I'm feeling a little bit down or that self-doubt is creeping in and I would love to talk with you more about it, to have you listen for a little bit. And it doesn't mean that you have to be talking forever, but it's simply sharing. And that continues to build that connection. And frankly, because of connection, we often become more confident through that because we're getting the what my dear friend Dr. John Townsend calls emotional nutrients. And we all need emotional and relational nutrients to move ourselves forward in life. So let's review. Self-doubt is not a blocker, it's a signal. The first question to convert this into momentum is to ask, what's the next smallest step forward? Next step is to label the doubt. What's the fear anchoring it? And then identify evidence against it. What wins can you point to? And then take action. What's one step you could take that is deliberate? Very important to make sure it is deliberate and intentional. So as a reminder, if you know anybody, particularly in the luxury hotel space, I am opening up a couple of spots to work with executive women to help them in communicating with confidence, public speaking, high stakes conversations. And if you know anybody that you think would find value in the work that I do, I would love to have an introduction. So we could get more of these wonderful tools out into the world, make a bigger impact, and do that primarily for me in the hospitality and hotel industry. All right. Have a wonderful rest of your day. If you loved today's episode, please subscribe and leave a review. It helps other people find the podcast faster, and it certainly helps me. Remember, you too can stand out with unshakable confidence.